The wind at my father's burial cut straight through my coat, and my own brother used it as cover to grip my elbow and walk me off the property. He did it with that calm, polished way rich men do ugly things. His hand stayed firm above my arm while he guided me past the flowers, past the guests, past the casket, as if I were just one more problem to be moved before anyone important had to notice. Then, with a sad little smile for the crowd, he told people I had been begging at Dad's funeral. I did not pull away. I did not shout. I did not give them the scene they were waiting to enjoy. What none of them knew, not Everett, not his wife Deline, not the lawyer already carrying the future in a leather folder, was that the old sewing chest they had handed me to get rid of me was about to change everything. A black Mercedes would roll up that gravel drive. An old man would step out, hold up a single sheet of cream paper, and say one word that emptied the room. Chairwoman. My name is Rosalind Vance, and I drove to my father's funeral with machine oil still on my hands. I had been up since 4 a.m. finishing a coat for a customer who needed it by Monday. Death does not stop the orders. Grief does not pay the electric bill. It only makes your hands heavier while you work. The Vance estate sits 40 minutes north of my little shop, past a long gravel road and the brick buildings where my father built everything he owned out of one sewing machine and 40 years of not sleeping. When I turned into the drive, the cars told me exactly what kind of funeral this would be. Black German sedans. A valet. Fresh white tents. It looked less like a burial and more like a business event with flowers. I parked my 10-year-old truck at the far edge of the field where no one would have to see it and walked up alone. People I hadn't seen in years turned to look at me, then turned away. The way people look at a stain and hope somebody else cleans it. Deline found me first. She air-kissed the space near my cheek. Then her eyes dropped to my hands. The calluses. The tiny pin marks. The small burn scar from a steam press. Something in her face shut like a drawer. You could have gotten a manicure, she said softly. For your father. I looked down at my own hands. My father had built his life with hands exactly like these. But in that yard, nobody could see that. The coat wasn't going to finish itself, I said. I meant it as a fact. She heard it as an excuse. She gave me a tight little smile and guided me toward the back rows, where the family failures were expected to sit quietly and be thankful for a chair. You have to understand what it meant in our family to work with your hands. My father measured people the way he measured cloth, by what they produced, by what they earned, by what could be counted in numbers. Everett produced contracts and expansion plans. I produced buttonholes and perfect hems. In our house, that math was settled before I could even argue. When I was 9, I fixed a hem on my father's work coat. I was proud of it. The stitch was almost invisible. I brought it to him like a child offering gold. He turned the coat inside out, checked the tension, and said, "Every company needs one person who knows how to mend what the others break." I carried that sentence for 27 years like an insult. Not the one who builds. Not the one who leads. The mender. The patcher. The person in the back room for when something tears. My mother died when I was 12, and after that the house got quieter and colder. Everett went to business school. I went to the workroom because it was the only place where I could breathe. A straight seam never once told me I was a disappointment. By 21, I had left to open my own shop. Small. Plain. Mine. My father never visited, not once, or so I believed then. We spoke twice a year at holidays in neat little sentences that sounded like receipts. And now he was in the ground, and I was in the back row at his funeral, and the only thing he had left me was that sentence I still did not understand. Every company needs one person who knows how to mend. I did not know yet that he had spent the last 2 years proving he meant it. I did not know he had hidden the proof in a box of old thread. Everett ran the funeral like a man closing a deal he had already won. He moved through the crowd in a charcoal suit that cost more than my rent, shaking hands, accepting condolences that sounded almost like congratulations. "The company is in good hands now," one man told him. Everett did not correct him. Deline had made a guest list. Buyer sat near the front. Family in the back. There were name cards at a burial. My father's death had been arranged by status. Then the family lawyer arrived before the service had even ended, carrying his leather folder under one arm. He had not come to grieve. He had come to read. When Everett saw him, he smiled for real. Wide. Hungry. Certain. I felt the cold rise through the soles of my shoes. Everyone but me already seemed to know how the day would end. While we waited, my mind slipped somewhere strange. I remembered a customer from 2 years earlier, an old man with a cane he didn't need and a voice like rough wood. He wanted a coat made the old way, measured, handset, canvassed properly. He questioned every stitch. Made me redo one shoulder twice. Ran his thumb down my seams like he was hunting for a flaw. He paid cash, gave no name, promised to return, and never came back. I had not thought about him in months, but standing in my father's yard, watching the lawyer open that folder, I suddenly remembered the way that man had looked at my hands. Not with disgust. With attention. Like he was reading them. I could not place why it mattered, so I pushed it away. That was my first mistake. They read the will in the front parlor under a portrait of my father that made him look far kinder than he ever was in life. Everett sat in the center chair like it had already become a throne. Deline sat beside him with a legal pad. I stood in the doorway because nobody had left me a chair and nobody offered one. The lawyer read quickly and flatly. The house to Everett. The estate accounts to Everett and Deline. The controlling financial interest in Vance Textile and Tailoring Works to Everett. The company. The buildings. The name. The money. The value of 40 years of my father's life moved, in dry legal language, toward my brother. My name did not come for a long time. When it finally did, the lawyer paused. To my daughter, Rosalind Vance, I leave the contents of my sewing chest. That was all. A cousin laughed before she could stop herself. Deline's pen froze. Everett looked at me, and what I saw on his face was not cruelty. It was relief. The numbers had come out the way he always knew they would. The son got the company. The daughter who stitched in the back got the thread. Well, Everett said, spreading his hands like he was generous enough to joke with me, at least Dad kept his sense of humor. People laughed then because he had shown them it was safe. I did not laugh. I did not cry. I just stood there thinking, a sewing chest. A box of old tools. After everything. I did not know I was standing in a room full of people who had just watched my father hand me the whole future and mistaken it for a joke. They brought me the chest a few minutes later. It was old oak, scarred and heavy, with a brass latch gone green with age. It smelled like cedar, beeswax, and machine oil. It smelled like the workroom where I had hidden as a girl. I put both hands on the lid and did not open it. Not there. Not with them watching my face. Deline stepped close. You'll want to take that today, she said. We're having people in next week, and we really need to start clearing the clutter. Clutter. My father's tools. The only thing he had chosen for me. Already reduced to clutter. I lifted the chest. As I turned, the lid shifted and I caught sight of something inside that did not belong. Paper. Old, heavy paper. And the yellow edge of an envelope tucked down the side. I almost stopped right there. But Everett was watching. The room was watching. And I had learned a long time ago that the fastest way out of a place that does not want you is to give it nothing to remember. So I closed my hands around the chest and headed for the door. I told myself I would open the envelope later, at home, where nobody could take it from me. I had made it only a few steps when Everett stopped me. Rosalind. He came toward me with that tired, angry look men get when they have spent all day performing. You're not going to make a thing of this, he said. Make a thing of what? The will. The box. Any of it. There are people here who matter to this company. I won't have them watching my sister mope around like she was cheated. I'm carrying a box to my truck. You're carrying a look. He said it like the look was the crime. I'll be gone in 5 minutes, I told him. That should have been the end of it. If he had let me walk, I would have driven home, opened the envelope alone, and the rest of this story would have happened very differently. But my brother had spent the whole day being told the company was his. Somewhere in all that, he forgot the one thing my father always understood. When you have already won, stop. Instead, Everett reached out and took hold of my elbow. He steered me. There is no kinder word for it. He guided me across the room and through the front doors like I was a problem being removed. I could have pulled free. I am stronger than I look. Years of pressing wool will do that. But I saw the buyers turning toward us. I saw faces sharpen with interest. I understood the trap at once. If I fought, I was hysterical. If I cried, I was pathetic. If I let him walk me out with my head up and the chest in my arms, then I stayed the one thing they could not take from me. Composed. So I let him steer. And as we passed the important people, Everett did the ugliest thing of all. He made it sound kind. I'm sorry about this, he told them with a sad smile. She was practically begging at Dad's funeral. It's been hard on her. Begging. I had not asked anyone for anything. I had stood in a doorway, taken a box of thread, and tried to leave quietly. But the word landed anyway. I watched faces rearrange themselves into sympathy for my brother, the poor man burdened with a sister like me. He walked me down the front steps, through the cold, and all the way to the gate at the edge of the property. He let go only when I stood on the public side of the iron. Then he turned back toward the house without a word, brushing his palm once against his trouser leg as if he had touched something unclean. And just like that, I was outside the gate with a sewing chest at my feet, watching my family through bars. I could see the tent. The caterers. The buyers. I could see Everett rejoin them. I could see Deline slide into place and smooth the day back into shape. Then somebody laughed. That was what hurt most. Not the cruelty. Cruelty at least means someone is thinking about you. It was how quickly they forgot I had been there at all. I set the chest down on the roadside and put my cold hands flat on the lid. I told myself I would open the envelope at home. I would not do it there, with the gate watching. I would drive back to my shop and return to being the person my father had never thought worth visiting. I had my keys in my hand when I heard the car. Low. Smooth. Expensive. Coming slowly up the county road behind me. The black Mercedes stopped a few feet away. An old man stepped out, maybe 70 or more, wearing a good gray coat. He came around the front of the car without hurrying and looked at me the way you look at someone you have been trying hard to find. Rosalind Vance? He asked. Yes. Behind me, beyond the gate, I could still hear voices and glasses and the soft machinery of a family congratulating itself. The man looked up the drive at all of it. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out one folded sheet of cream paper. He held it up. Chairwoman, he said. For a second I thought grief had finally broken me. I'm sorry, I said. Who are you? Gideon Marsh. The name meant nothing to me. Your father and I built that company together, he said. 40 years ago. Before your brother. Before any of them. This is a stock certificate, Rosalind. Founders voting shares. Your father signed them into your name 2 years ago and asked me to hold them until today. Until after the will was read. Until after you saw exactly how they would treat you when they thought you had nothing. I looked at the paper. At my father's signature. The same cramped hand that had signed my school forms without reading them. The sewing chest, I whispered. The originals are in there, Gideon said. He knew you'd be the only one who would bother to open a box of old thread. Behind the gate, my brother laughed at something. For the first time all day, the wind stopped mattering. Come with me, Gideon said. There are things you need to understand before you decide anything. I picked up the chest and got into the car. The offices were only 2 miles away. Gideon drove in silence that felt like respect. I sat beside him with the chest on my lap, feeling as if I had walked out of one life and had not yet landed in the next. Inside the building, a few managers had already come back after the funeral. When I walked through the lobby with that old chest in my arms, people looked up and did not look away. A young woman at the desk half stood. "Can I help you, ma'am?" "Ma'am." No one had ever said that to me in this building before. Gideon led me to the boardroom. Priya, the company lawyer, arrived soon after and laid out the truth in plain language. The company had 2 classes of stock. Everett had inherited most of the money. I had inherited the votes that controlled the board. Not the biggest share of the value. The final say. "He doesn't know?" I asked. "Not yet," Priya said. Right then the door opened and Everett walked in. Tie loose. Face flushed. He stopped when he saw me seated at the head of the table and actually laughed in disbelief. "What is this?" he said. "Roz, you can't just sit here. This is a boardroom." "As of this morning," Priya said quietly, "it's hers." His smile held, but his eyes dropped to the certificate. I watched him read fast, hunting for the flaw that would set the world right again. Priya slid the records toward him. "The transfer is clean," she said. "Signed. Witnessed. Recorded 2 years ago." Everett read it again. Then his hand came down flat on the table, not slamming, just steadying himself. "This is a mistake." But his voice had changed. He knew it was not. Gideon said nothing. He did not need to. Everett looked at me then, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years, trying to match the sister he had just walked to a gate with the woman now seated at the head of his father's table. "I'm calling my lawyer," he said, and walked out. Deline came next, but in a new costume. Warm. Soft. Full of family. An hour earlier I had been clutter. Now I was suddenly important. She put her manicured hand over mine and talked about support, unity, and how Theo adored his Aunt Rosalind. I let her speak. Under every word, one cold question opened wider inside me. What did I actually want? I asked Gideon to show me the floor, not the offices. The place where the work happened. He took me downstairs, and the second the doors opened, something inside me loosened. Machines. Pressing tables. Hot metal. Cloth stacked to the ceiling. This I understood. An older woman looked up from a jacket she was finishing by hand. Gray hair pinned back. Reading glasses low on her nose. Before I really saw her face, I saw the seam in her lap. Beautiful. Hand-felled. Perfect. "That's lovely work," I said. She looked surprised. "Nora," she said. Then she looked at my hands. "You've done this 20 years. She smiled at me, the first true smile I had received all day. Then it faded. "You should see what they've got us doing now. Since your brother took over operations, corners everywhere. Fusing where we used to hand pad. He says the customer can't tell." She lifted the jacket. "The customer can always tell," she said softly. Then she studied me. "Do I know your work? I swear I know this hand." I didn't know it yet, but that question would matter later. Upstairs, Gideon told me about the beginning. 2 men. 1 machine. A leaking room. My father could build with his hands. Gideon could talk to banks. Together they built Vance Works. He was hard, Gideon said. Harder than he should have been. Hardest on the people he feared failing. "Rosalind, your father was terrified of you." I told him that was impossible. Gideon only looked at me and then showed me an envelope with my name on it. "He wrote you a letter," he said. "But not yet. You're not ready tonight." He was right. That night at home, I opened the sewing chest slowly, like a person going through the pockets of someone gone. My father's shears. His thimbles. Spools of thread in colors nobody makes anymore. Then, tucked beneath the lining, a small muslin bundle. Inside was a coil of waxed thread and a scrap of charcoal herringbone wool with a shoulder seam sewn into it. I knew that seam. I knew that cloth. I turned it over and found a date in faded pencil. 2 years earlier. The exact week the rude old man with the cane had come to my shop and made me redo a shoulder twice. I sat down hard. It was my father. He had come to my shop in disguise. Sat in my chair. Let me measure him. Watched my hands solve a problem. Tested me because he could not bear to come as himself. And I had passed. He had left with a coat made by my hands and then gone straight to a lawyer and signed control of the company into my name. He had seen me. He had known exactly what I was. And he had said nothing. At 3 a.m, holding that scrap of cloth, I cried until I shook. By dawn, my grief had turned sharp. He had seen me and still kept silent. He could have called. He could have come back without the disguise. He could have said one true sentence while it still cost him something. Instead he waited until death made honesty safe. I was furious. I was grateful. Both at once. Then Everett made his move. Within days, buyers began calling with polite little questions. Suppliers suddenly got careful. No one said anything plain enough to use against him. Everett simply planted doubt in the right ears. My sister is talented, he told them. Lovely work with alterations. But running a company this size? He never finished the sentence. He let other people do the cruel part. For a little while, I almost played his game. I sat down to write letters full of numbers and plans, trying to sound like Everett. I stopped after 2 paragraphs because I heard my father in them too, the same ruler, the same measuring. So I called the managers in instead and told them the truth. I did not know their jobs. I wanted them to teach me. I knew one thing very well: if the work was bad, the customer would find out. Cole, a floor manager with a hard face, decided to test me. With respect, he said, meaning none, you've run a little shop. This is a company. What makes you think you know anything about how it's made? I asked for a finished jacket from the line. He brought one over with a small smirk. I turned it inside out and found the problem in seconds. This canvas is fused, I said. Glued in. It'll bubble after a few cleanings. The customer won't know why it looks wrong. He'll just know it looks cheap. The room went still. Who signed off on this? Nobody answered, but several eyes shifted toward operations. Cole stared. You felt that through the lining? I've been feeling things through lining since I was 9. His smirk disappeared. The old man used to do that. I know, I said. He taught me. Something changed then. I had not won them, but I had told them the truth about their own work. The next morning Everett came to me alone and changed tactics. He sat down calmly and offered peace. You keep the shares. Keep the title. Chairwoman, if you want. But let me run operations. You take a distribution every quarter. Real money. Life-changing money. Then you go back to your little shop and never have to think about this place again. He said it gently, and that made it dangerous. Because he was offering me exactly what I had wanted at the gate. Quiet. Distance. My own clean life. Enough money to stop worrying. For 1 week, tired moment, I wanted to say yes. Then I thought of Nora. Of The Apprentice. Of hands being treated like clutter. I need to think about it, I said. That night I sat in my dark shop and forced myself to face what I had almost done. My father had not left me the say so I could sell it back for comfort. He had left it because he trusted me to protect the people who made things with their hands. I called Gideon at dawn. I'm not taking the deal, I said. I'm staying. There was a pause. Then he said, good. Because now he stops being polite. He did. My shop had long bought cloth through Vance Works, and when I got overloaded, a few big jobs were finished on their machines. It had run on a handshake for years. Everett ended it with a formal letter. Conflict of interest. Effective in 30 days. My costs jumped overnight. 2 commissions were suddenly in danger. When I tried to open my own account with the mill, the answer I got was careful enough to tell me he had already called them. He could not touch my shares, so he put his hand around my throat another way. That night I sat at my work table with bills, cloth, and a dark thought. I had the votes. I could end him. I opened my laptop and drafted the emergency notice. I wrote the words that would remove him from operations. I even started the statement that would expose what he had done at the funeral. I read it back and felt something ugly. It felt good. Then Nora saved me without knowing it. Earlier that day I had watched her with that nervous 19-year-old apprentice ruining seam after seam. She took the ripper from him gently and started him again. Everybody ruins the first 10, she told him. What matters is whether you sit back down. Then she said, you can tell everything about a person by how they treat the one still learning, not the one who can hurt them back. I took my hand off the keyboard. If I destroyed Everett because I could, then I would be doing exactly what he had done to me. I would be measuring a person by how deeply I could hurt him and calling it justice. I closed the laptop. The next day Deline came to my shop. Not polished now. Just tired. She told me the truth. They were drowning in debt. The house borrowed against. The cars leased. Theo's school calling because payments were late. He thought he'd inherit everything, she said. We both did. Theo keeps asking if he did something wrong. It did not excuse the gate. Nothing excused the gate. But it made my anger less clean. When she left, she forgot one of Theo's drawings on my counter. A child's picture of a factory, labeled in crooked letters, where Daddy works. A factory at a funeral. That drawing stayed with me. It told me the machine had already reached the boy. It had already taught him where Worth lived. So I made my choice. Everett had to lose control of operations, not because I wanted revenge, but because the work needed saving. And so did the people learning what mattered. I called Priya and asked about restructuring. She agreed. Then she told me the price. To do it cleanly, she said, we'd close the old textile plant. It's been running at a loss for years. Any responsible board would cut it first. She sent the personnel list the next morning. 120 names. Fourth from the top was Nora. There it was, the clean win. The sensible answer. The professional move. And it would throw the exact people I was trying to protect out of work. I spent a day and a night trying to solve it alone. Every path felt wrong. Close the plant and save the company from Everett but betray the workers. Keep the plant and leave them under him. Walk away and betray all of it. I nearly gave up. Then I finally understood that carrying everything alone was not strength. It was surrender dressed up as dignity. So I called Gideon. We met in the empty boardroom after hours. I spread the list in front of him. The trap. The workers. Nora. The impossible choice. He listened without interrupting. Then he reached into his coat and brought out the envelope. It's time, he said. Your father told me to give you this when you stopped trying to win and started trying to do what was right. I opened it. My father did not apologize the way I had once dreamed he might. But he told the truth. He wrote that he had measured me and Everett with a ruler he inherited and never questioned. He wrote that he had taught us both that the one who builds is worth more than the one who mends, and that he had been wrong. He wrote that it took him sitting in my shop, watching my hands do the work he loved most in the world, to finally see it. Then he wrote the line that turned everything over. I am not leaving you a company, I am leaving you the say because you are the only one of us who might set the ruler down. Do not punish your brother. Fix the ruler. Mend what the rest of us broke. I read it 3 times. And then I saw my own life clearly. Every back row. Every hidden hand. Every time I decided in advance that I was not worth a chair. I had been using my father's ruler on myself. Fixing it had to start there. Once I stopped trying to win and stopped trying to vanish, a third road finally appeared. I could keep the plant open. Keep the workers. Keep Everett from cutting the trade to pieces. But only if I stopped thinking like a Vance making a deal and started thinking like the thing I truly was. A mender. I called a full board meeting for Friday and invited people who were never invited. Nora. Cole. 2 pressers from the old plant. The apprentice. The people whose lives were usually decided in rooms they were never allowed to enter. When Everett heard, he called at once. What are you doing? Bringing the floor into a board meeting? Is this your revenge? Are you going to humiliate me in front of them? No, I said. That isn't the plan. Friday came. One side of the walnut table held the board, the lawyers, Everett and charcoal, Deline beside him. Clean cuffs. Smooth hands. The people who measured worth in titles. The other side held Nora with her reading glasses, Cole with his sleeves rolled, the 2 pressers, and the frightened apprentice in a tie that did not fit. And in the middle of the table, where reports usually sat, I put my father's scarred sewing chest. Priya opened the meeting and read the agenda. Restructuring operations. The future of the textile plant. I watched the workers hear the possible end of their lives in clean business words. Then I stood. 2 weeks ago, I said, most of you watched my brother walk me off our father's property during his funeral. He told people I was begging. Nobody moved. What none of you knew was that our father had already signed controlling voting shares of this company into my name. So let me be clear. I control this board. I can remove any officer in this room today. I can close the old plant this afternoon. I can tell every buyer exactly what happened at that funeral. I can end my brother's career before lunch. The room leaned toward me. The board understood power only when it looked like a weapon. Nora folded her hands and waited for the blow. I picked up the pen beside the resolutions. Then I set it back down. But I am not going to do any of that, I said. Everett's head lifted sharply. Why? His voice came out rough. You have it. You have all of it. I called you a beggar. I walked you to the gate. You can end me. Why won't you? Because he could not imagine a person choosing not to win when they finally could. I lifted the certificate. Because this is not a weapon. Everyone in this family thought it was. That is the whole problem. That is the ruler. Then I told them what would happen. The plant stays open. All 120 jobs stay. Nobody loses a livelihood so I can win an argument with my brother. A man at the end of the table let out a breath that sounded like relief breaking open. Everett stays too, I said, and that shocked the room more than anything. Not the way things have been. The corner cutting ends now. The handwork comes back where it belongs. He keeps a real job under a board that values the trade. He is good at parts of this business I am not. What stops today is the idea that the craft is disposable. Then I looked at the workers. And I will take the money I was offered for doing nothing and create a trust in our father's name. Apprenticeships. Tuition. Wages for master workers like Nora to teach before this knowledge disappears. This company was built by a needle. Somewhere along the way, it forgot that. Silence filled the room. Everett stared at me as if I had become impossible. You could have ended me, he said. I know, I answered. That is why I won't. I set the certificate back into the sewing chest and closed the lid. No one clapped. That is how I know it was real. The room just sat there, breathing in a new shape. Then I heard a small broken sound and turned to see Nora crying silently, glasses pressed to her mouth. Cole had his arms folded tight and his eyes wet. The apprentice looked at all of us like he had just seen a door open. I had not destroyed anyone. I had simply told a room full of people that hands mattered. That was enough. Everett stood. For 1 second I thought he might storm out. Instead he walked the long way around the table, past the workers, and stopped in front of me. He did not apologize. Not fully. Men like Everett do not change that fast. But he said my name. Rosalind. Not Roz. My full name. I don't understand you, he said quietly. I know, I told him. You were taught not to. He nodded once, looked down at the chest, and then took an open seat at the table. Not the head. A working seat. The same as everyone else. For the first time in our family's history, my brother sat down among the hands. After the meeting, Gideon stayed behind with me. He looked out the window at the workers still gathered in the parking lot, talking with their hands because something big had shifted and none of them were ready to go home yet. Your father would have, he began. He already did, I said. I touched the sewing chest. He came to my shop. He sat in my chair. He let me measure him. He made me redo a shoulder twice. Then he wore my work over his heart for 2 years. That was him saying it. Gideon smiled. He kept that coat to the end. I laughed then, startled by the sound. Before I left, I found Nora back where I should have known she would be. At her machine. I don't want to thank you, I told her. I want to hire you. To run the trust. To train the next generation. To teach what your hands know before it's gone. She stared at me. I'm 63. I know, I said. That's exactly why. She reached for my hand, her rough palm against mine. Your father chose the right one, she said. Not the right heir. The right mentor. The months after were quieter than people expect from endings like this. The Harold Vance Trust for the Trades funded its first apprentices that spring. Nora runs it like the future depends on it, because it does. The old plant stayed open and became the place for the hand-finished work machines cannot fake. Turns out there are still customers who can tell the difference and will pay for it. Everett still works at the company under the board. The corner cutting stopped. He is better now than he used to be, maybe because he no longer has to spend every hour trying to prove he deserves the room. We are not close. But sometimes he calls, and he uses my full name. Once, awkward and embarrassed, he asked me to teach Theo a hand stitch. So I did. Theo comes to my shop some Saturdays. He is not naturally good at it. His stitches wander. He ruins things. But he always sits back down, and that matters more than talent. Last month he made his first real buttonhole. It was crooked and proud and fully his. Is it good? He asked. I turned it inside out and checked the tension, just as my father once did to me. Then I did what my father could not. I looked at that boy and said, it's yours. You made it with your own hands. That makes it worth something. He smiled so wide it nearly broke me. As for me, I still sit at my machine most days. That surprises people. They expect the woman who controls a company to want a corner office and a view. I have a workroom that smells like beeswax and machine oil, a chair with stuffing coming out of one arm, and my father's shears on the bench beside me. I go to the meetings. I sign what needs signing. But this, the machine, the cloth, the straight seam that never once told me I was a disappointment, this is still where I live. The difference is that it is no longer where I hide. For years, this room was the back row I gave myself before anybody else could do it. Now it knows exactly who I am. And so do I. That was the real inheritance. Not the money. Not the votes. Not even the company. The willingness to see clearly. My father learned it too late to say aloud. My brother is still learning it. I almost missed it myself, standing at that gate in the cold, holding a box of thread and mistaking dignity for defeat. But I did not miss it. I kept the shop. I kept the workers. And in the end, I kept myself.